The notification arrived without ceremony. A single pulse of light across every communication array on Earth, followed by the sterile voice of the hegemony's automated translation matrix. By unanimous decree of the Galactic Hegemony Council, Sol 3 designated species human is hereby placed under indefinite quarantine. All interstellar travel privileges revoked. Enforcement begins immediately. Admiral Skylar Brennan stood in the command center of Lunar Base, watching Earth's blue marble through the reinforced viewport. Behind her, a dozen officers sat frozen at their stations, the weight of the announcement settling like lead in their stomachs. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. "Ma'am." Colonel Martinez, a tactical officer, finally spoke. His voice carried the strain of a man trying to process the impossible. "Orders." Brennan turned slowly, her weathered face betraying nothing. 40 years of military service had taught her to compartmentalize shock, to function when others froze. But this was different. Humanity had spent 2 centuries fighting for a seat at the galactic table, only to be told they weren't welcome. "Status report," she said simply. Major Reynolds at the communications station cleared her throat. "All civilian transport vessels have been disabled, ma'am. Some kind of targeted EMP pulse. No casualties reported, but every ship with jump capability is dead in space. Military assets? Unaffected for now. But Admiral..." Reynolds hesitated. "We're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. They're not just enforcing the quarantine, they're surrounding us." Brennan nodded grimly. She'd expected as much. The hegemony didn't make idle threats. Composed of 7 major species and dozens of client races, they commanded technology that made human achievements look like stone tools. The Korathi with their phase-shift drives, the crystalline Vexitar who could manipulate matter at the molecular level, the hive-minded Seklai whose bioships could regenerate damage in real time. Any one of them could glass Earth's surface if they chose to. "Bring up the tactical display," Brennan ordered. The holographic projection materialized in the center of the room, showing the Sol system in painful detail. Red markers indicated hegemony vessels, dozens of them, positioned at every jump point, orbital station, and major shipping lane. They'd moved with surgical precision, cutting off every escape route in a matter of hours. "Jesus Christ," Martinez whispered. "How long have they been planning this?" Brennan studied the formation with a tactician's eye. Too coordinated, too perfect. This wasn't a hastily assembled blockade. It was a military operation months in the making. The hegemony had been preparing to cage humanity while still smiling at diplomatic summits. "Ma'am," Reynolds called out, "incoming transmission from the hegemony flagship." "Put it through." The hologram shifted, revealing the imposing figure of Fleet Admiral Zexithok of the Korathi. His species resembled humanoid sharks, with mottled grey skin and rows of razor teeth. But it was his eyes that made humans uncomfortable, black, predatory, ancient with the weight of a species that had been conquering worlds when humanity was still discovering fire. "Admiral Brennan." Zexthok's voice rumbled through the universal translator, each word carefully modulated for maximum intimidation. "I trust the Council's decision has been made clear." "Crystal," Brennan replied, her tone neutral. "Though I'm curious about the timing. Last week we were negotiating trade agreements. Today we're criminals. What changed?" Zexthok's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "Nothing changed, human. We simply stopped pretending your species was capable of responsible galactic citizenship. The incident at Kepler Station, the territorial disputes with the Thurian Commerce Guild, your military's aggressive expansion into neutral space. The pattern is undeniable." Brennan's jaw tightened. Every incident he mentioned had been defensive actions, or misunderstandings blown out of proportion by species looking for excuses to limit human influence. But she kept her voice level. And the quarantine? How long? Indefinite. Your species will remain confined to this system until you demonstrate the emotional maturity required for interstellar society. Given human developmental patterns, we estimate perhaps 5 centuries should suffice. 5 centuries. Brennan felt something cold settle in her chest. By then, every human alive today would be ancient history. Their children's children's children might live to see the bars of their cage opened, if they were lucky. The terms are non-negotiable. Zexatok continued. Any attempt to breach the quarantine will be met with appropriate force. Do not test us, Admiral. The hegemony has ended the expansion of 13 species. None survived the experience. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Brennan stared at the tactical display, her mind racing through impossible scenarios. 73 hegemony vessels surrounded the system. Battle cruisers that could shatter moons, carrier groups with fighter wings that numbered in the thousands, support ships equipped with technology humanity barely understood. On paper, the fight was hopeless. Earth's combined military forces numbered perhaps 300 ships, most of them patrol craft and defensive platforms. The hegemony possessed fleets that could darken the skies of a dozen worlds simultaneously. But Admiral Schuyler Brennan had not spent 4 decades in the military without learning a few things about impossible odds. Martinez, she said quietly, send a flash transmission to all senior command staff. Authorization code 77 Alpha Black. Martinez's eyes widened. Ma'am, that's... I know what it is, Colonel. Send it. 77 Alpha Black was more than a code. It was a key to humanity's greatest secret, buried so deep that only a handful of people in the entire species knew it existed. As Martinez's fingers flew across his console, Brennan allowed herself one moment of grim satisfaction. The hegemony thought they were caging sheep. They were about to discover they'd trapped wolves. The emergency session convened in a chamber that didn't officially exist. 3 kilometers beneath the Sahara Desert, carved from living rock and shielded against every form of detection known to science, the Prometheus facility had been humanity's most closely guarded secret for over a century. 7 figures sat around a table of polished obsidian, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of quantum processors. These were the architects, the men and women who had guided humanity's true military development while the galaxy watched their public facade. Admiral Brennan took her seat at the head of the table, nodding to each member in turn. General Morrison, head of Special Projects Division. Dr. Elizabeth Kane, Director of Advanced Weaponry Research. Admiral Petrov of the Russian Federation's Deep Space Command. Commander Yamamoto from Japan's Technical Intelligence Corps. General Endala from the African Union's Strategic Defense Initiative. And finally, Dr. James Wright, the man who had started it all. Wright was ancient now, well past 100, kept alive by medical technology that officially didn't exist. His eyes still burned with the intensity that had driven him to create humanity's shadow military when he was just a young physicist working on theoretical propulsion systems. The quarantine is in effect, Brennan announced without preamble. 73 hegemony vessels, positioned at every exit point. They're not just blocking us, they're sending a message to the entire galaxy. This is what happens when you challenge the established order. How long do we have? Dr. Kane asked, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface. Unknown. Zexathok seemed confident we'd accept the situation quietly. But if we're going to act, it has to be soon. Every day we wait, they'll strengthen their positions. General Morrison leaned forward, his scarred face grim. Schuyler, I need to ask, are we really considering this? If we reveal the fleet, there's no going back. We'll be committed to a war we might not be able to win. Brennan met his gaze steadily. The alternative is watching humanity slowly suffocate in a cage while the hegemony decides our fate. Our children deserve better than that. Dr. Wright spoke for the first time, his voice barely above a whisper, but carrying absolute authority. I've watched this species grow from warring tribes to a spacefaring civilization. We've made mistakes, terrible ones. But we've also shown something the hegemony fears more than any weapon: the ability to adapt, to overcome, to refuse submission even when facing impossible odds. That's why they're caging us. Not because we're violent, but because we're dangerous to their comfortable order. He activated his console, and the chamber's walls came alive with holographic displays. Star charts, technical specifications, deployment orders, the accumulated work of a century's preparation. Project Prometheus began in 2387. Wright continued. After our first contact with the hegemony made it clear we were entering a universe where might determined right. While our public face engaged in diplomacy and trade, we prepared for the possibility that words wouldn't be enough. The displays shifted, showing massive construction facilities hidden in the asteroid belt, on the moons of distant gas giants, in the void between systems. Shipyards that had operated in absolute secrecy, building vessels with technology decades ahead of anything humanity had publicly revealed. 147 ships, Admiral Petrov said, reading from his display. Battle cruisers, carriers, destroyers, support vessels, all equipped with experimental technology the hegemony doesn't know exists. Brennan studied the fleet roster with professional interest. The ships looked different from standard human vessels, sleeker, more angular, their hulls incorporating design principles stolen from a dozen different species over decades of careful intelligence gathering. But it was their specifications that made her breath catch. The UHCS Prometheus, the fleet's flagship, massed nearly 3 times more than any known human battleship. Its primary weapon was something called a quantum lance, a directed energy beam that could theoretically punch through any known shielding system. Its armor incorporated self-repairing nanotechnology, reverse-engineered from captured Sekli bioships. Its engines could achieve acceleration rates that would turn an unprotected human crew into paste. The crews? Brennan asked. Commander Yamamoto answered. Hand-selected volunteers from every branch of service, every nation. They've been training in deep space facilities for decades, believing they were preparing for exploration missions or theoretical combat scenarios. All background checked, all sworn to absolute secrecy. Many don't even know what they're really part of. And they'll follow orders, even knowing it means war with the entire hegemony? Admiral, Dr. Kane said quietly. I've worked with these people for 30 years. They joined because they believed in something bigger than themselves. When they learn the truth, that they're humanity's last hope against extinction, I think you'll find them more than willing to fight. Brennan nodded slowly. The plan was audacious to the point of insanity. But sometimes insanity was the only rational response to an irrational universe. Deployment timeline. 72 hours, General Morrison replied. The ships are already moving into position, using stealth systems to avoid detection. They'll assemble at Rally Point Omega. He gestured to a point in space beyond Pluto's orbit, and await final orders. And our public forces? We'll maintain normal defensive positions. Let the hegemony think we're accepting the quarantine while our real strength moves into place. Brennan stood, her decision crystallizing into certainty. Gentlemen, ladies, we are about to commit an act that will echo through history. If we succeed, humanity takes its place as a true power in the galaxy. If we fail, we may be signing our species' death warrant. She looked at each of them in turn. These architects of humanity's secret war. Are we in agreement? 7 hands rose in unanimous consent. Then let's show them what happens when you corner a human. Captain Elena Vasquez had commanded the UHCS Nemesis for 8 years without ever firing a shot in anger. As far as the universe knew, she was running extended deep space surveys in the Kuiper Belt, testing experimental sensor arrays and propulsion systems. The truth was far more complicated. Standing on her ship's bridge, watching the tactical display populate with friendly contacts, she felt the weight of secrecy finally lifting from her shoulders. Around her, the crew worked with practiced efficiency, their faces showing varying degrees of shock, excitement, and grim determination as the reality of their situation became clear. "Captain," her executive officer, Commander Torres, reported. "All ships have reached Rally Point Omega. Fleet Admiral Brennan requests you report to the Prometheus for mission briefing." Vasquez nodded. She'd served under Brennan before, back when they were both climbing the ranks in the public navy. Skylar Brennan was a tactician's tactician, calm under pressure, brilliant at reading enemy intentions, and absolutely ruthless when the situation demanded it. If anyone could guide humanity through what was coming, it would be her. The shuttle bay of the Prometheus was larger than some ships Vasquez had commanded. She counted at least 30 attack craft, their sleek forms incorporating stealth technology that made them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Everything about the flagship spoke of preparation, of years spent anticipating this exact moment. The briefing room held the commanding officers of humanity's secret fleet, men and women from every nation, every service branch, united by their willingness to fight for their species' freedom. Admiral Brennan stood at the head of the table, her presence commanding immediate attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," Brennan began, "you've all been briefed on the situation. The hegemony has quarantined our system with 73 ships, intending to keep us caged for centuries. They believe humanity is too dangerous to be allowed free movement through the galaxy." She activated the room's holographic display, showing the current positions of enemy forces. "They're not wrong. We are dangerous. To their comfortable order, their assumption of superiority, their belief that might makes right. Today, we prove it." Captain Ahmed of the UHCS Retribution raised his hand. "Admiral, intelligence reports suggest some of those ships are equipped with planet-killer weapons. If we provoke them, then we'd better make sure they don't get the chance to use them." Brennan replied grimly. "This isn't about heroics, people. This is about survival. The hegemony has made it clear that peaceful coexistence isn't an option. They want us contained, controlled, eventually forgotten. That's not happening on my watch." She gestured to the display, highlighting key enemy positions. "The attack will come in 3 phases. Phase 1. Long-range strikes using our quantum lance technology. These weapons are designed to penetrate hegemony shielding. They won't know what hit them until it's too late. Phase 2. Close combat engagement. Our ships are faster and more maneuverable than theirs. We use that advantage to fragment their formations, prevent coordinated responses. Phase 3. Systematic elimination of remaining forces. No survivors, no witnesses who can report our capabilities to the greater hegemony." The room was silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just a battle. It was an ambush designed to completely annihilate an enemy force while revealing as little as possible about human capabilities. Captain Morrison of the UHCS Defiance spoke up. "Admiral, once we do this, the hegemony will know we've been hiding our true strength. They'll send larger fleets." "Yes, they will," Brennan agreed. "But they'll also know that humanity is not the passive victim they believed us to be. Every ship they send here is one less ship they can use to intimidate other species. Every battle they fight with us weakens their hold on the galaxy." She paused, studying the faces around her. "Make no mistake, this is just the beginning. We're not fighting for surrender terms or negotiated settlements. We're fighting for the right to exist as a free species in an unfree galaxy. The moment we fire the first shot, we're committed to total victory or total defeat." Commander Singh, the youngest officer present, cleared his throat nervously. "Ma'am, the crews, they're good people, but most of them still think this is some kind of advanced training exercise. When they realize we're about to start a war, then we'd better make sure they understand what's at stake." Brennan replied, "Commander Torres, signal all ships. I want to address the entire fleet." Within minutes, every screen on every human ship displayed Admiral Brennan's face. She looked tired, older than her years, but her voice carried absolute conviction. "Officers and crew of the Prometheus fleet, this is Admiral Brennan. For decades you've trained for a mission you weren't allowed to understand. Today that mission becomes real." She paused, letting the words sink in. 72 hours ago, the galactic hegemony declared humanity a threat to galactic stability. They've quarantined our system, cutting us off from the stars, condemning our species to slow suffocation in a cage of their making. They believe we'll accept this fate quietly. They believe we're too weak, too divided, too primitive to challenge their authority. They're about to learn how wrong they are. In 1 hour, we will engage a hegemony blockade force. We will show them that humanity bows to no one, accepts no cage, submits to no master except our own conscience. We fight not for conquest, but for the fundamental right to determine our own destiny. Some of you will not survive the battle ahead, but your sacrifice will ensure that human children grow up free, that our species reaches for the stars with unshackled hands, that the galaxy learns to respect rather than merely tolerate us. This is Admiral Skylar Brennan, commanding the Prometheus fleet. All ships prepare for combat operations. Let's show them what humans do when cornered." The transmission ended, leaving thousands of men and women staring at screens in stunned silence. Then slowly, the reality began to sink in. They weren't just soldiers anymore. They were humanity's sword and shield, poised to strike a blow that would echo through the galaxy. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Captain Vasquez felt a cold smile cross her face. She'd trained her entire career for this moment, though she'd never dared believe it would come. "Helm," she ordered. "Set course for the enemy formation. Maximum stealth approach. Weapons. Quantum lance charged and ready. Target their flagship first, cut off the head, and the body dies." Around her, the crew worked with newfound purpose. They were no longer pretending to be explorers or researchers. They were predators, and the galaxy was about to learn why humanity had earned its cage. Fleet Admiral Zexathok stood on the command deck of the HSS Dominion, his black eyes studying the tactical display with professional interest. The quarantine had been in effect for 3 days, and so far the humans had shown admirable restraint. No futile charges against superior firepower, no desperate diplomatic pleas, no mass panic among their civilian population. Perhaps they were more rational than he'd given them credit for. "Sir," his tactical officer, a young Karathi named Vexma, approached with a datapad. Routine sensor sweeps continue to show normal activity throughout the human system. Their military vessels are maintaining defensive positions around their major population centers. Zexathok nodded approvingly. "Good. A species that accepts reality is a species that might eventually earn limited freedom. Continue monitoring, but reduce active scanning to minimum levels. No need to provoke them unnecessarily." The bridge of the Dominion hummed with quiet efficiency. 40 years of commanding hegemony fleets had taught Zexathok to trust his crew's competence while remaining alert for the unexpected. But honestly, what could the humans do? Their most advanced warships were barely a match for hegemony patrol craft. Their weapons technology lagged decades behind galactic standards. Their tactical doctrine was primitive at best. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Hegemony Command. Put it through." The holographic projector activated, revealing the austere features of Grand Admiral Thexeron, Supreme Commander of all Hegemony military forces. His expression was as unreadable as carved stone, but Zexathok had served under him long enough to recognize subtle signs of concern. Zexathok. Dexeran's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Status report on the human quarantine. Proceeding smoothly, sir. No incidents, no attempts to breach the blockade. Their military forces appear to be accepting the situation. Good. However, we've received intelligence suggesting the humans may be more resourceful than our initial assessments indicated. I'm dispatching the 3rd battle group to reinforce your position. Zexathok's predatory features creased in confusion. Sir, with respect, that seems unnecessary. We have more than sufficient force to... Admiral. Dexeran's tone carried a note of warning. The humans have been part of galactic civilization for less than 2 centuries, yet they've spread to over 40 star systems in that time. They've fought border conflicts with 3 different species and won 2 of them. Their adaptability is concerning. The transmission flickered with interference, then stabilized. Maintain your current positions, but prepare for the possibility that they may have hidden assets we're unaware of. The 3rd battle group will arrive in... The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by static. Zexathok stared at the empty hologram for a moment, then turned to his communications officer. Restore the connection? Sir, I'm trying, but we're experiencing massive interference across all channels. It's almost like something is jamming our communications from inside the system. A chill ran down Zexathok's spine. Sensors. Full spectrum scan. Now. The tactical officer's claws clicked rapidly across his console, then stopped. Sir, I'm detecting multiple energy signatures. High output, military grade. They're everywhere. The main display shifted, showing the solar system from a tactical perspective. Red markers appeared one by one. First dozens, then scores of contacts emerging from what should have been empty space. Ships that hadn't been there moments before materialized as if conjured from the void itself. Stealth technology? Zexathok breathed. They've been hiding an entire fleet. Sir, Bexamar's voice carried a note of panic. Energy readings on those ships. Some of them are larger than our battle cruisers. How is that possible? Zexathok's mind raced through the implications. The humans had been part of galactic civilization for 2 centuries, trading, learning, adapting. While the hegemony had dismissed them as primitive upstarts, they'd been studying, copying, improving. And apparently, building. All ships, he commanded. Battle stations. Raise shields, charge weapons, transmit to the human fleet. Sir, the tactical officer's voice cracked with disbelief. Massive energy spike from the human formation. Something's charging weapons we don't have on record. On the display, the largest human ship, easily the size of a hegemony dreadnought, began to glow with an eerie blue light. Quantum particles danced along its hull as something unprecedented prepared to fire. Evasive maneuvers! Zexathok roared. All ships scatter formation. Return fire with... The quantum lance fired. It wasn't like any weapon Zexathok had ever seen. Instead of an energy beam or projectile, space itself seemed to twist and tear along a line stretching from the human ship to the hegemony formation. Reality rippled like water struck by a stone, and everything in the lance's path simply ceased. The HSS Retribution, a heavy cruiser positioning itself to flank the human formation, was caught directly in the beam's path. For a split second, the ship existed in a state of quantum superposition, present and absent simultaneously. Then the wave collapsed, and where a warship had been, only empty space remained. What in the void was that? Bexmar whispered. Zexathok had no answer. In 40 years of military service, he'd never seen technology that could simply erase matter from existence. But even as his mind struggled to process the impossibility, more human ships were charging similar weapons. All vessels. He transmitted on the emergency frequency. Maximum firepower. Target their largest ships. Whatever they're using, we cannot allow. 3 more quantum lances fired simultaneously. The HSS Devastator, the HSS Iron Will, and the HSS Covenant all vanished in the space between one heartbeat and the next. 4 of his most powerful ships, gone without even debris to mark their passing. "Sir!" The tactical officer's voice rose to a near shriek. "The human fleet is moving to close engagement range. Estimated intercept in 47 minutes. Zexithok stared at the tactical display, watching red markers surge toward his defensive formation like a tide of destruction. Each human ship moved with precision that spoke of years of preparation, decades of planning for exactly this moment. They'd been played. While the hegemony had congratulated itself on containing a dangerous species, that species had been preparing for war with methodical, terrifying efficiency. "Signal the fleet," Zexithok ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around him. "All ships are to engage at maximum range. Do not allow them to close the distance." But even as he gave the order, he knew it might already be too late. The humans hadn't just hidden a fleet, they'd hidden a technological revolution. And now, trapped in what they'd thought was a cage, the hegemony was about to learn what happened when you cornered Earth's children. The battle for humanity's freedom had begun. The UHCS Prometheus cut through space like a knife through flesh, its quantum engines pushing it far beyond the performance parameters of any known human vessel. On the bridge, Admiral Brennan watched the tactical display with professional satisfaction as her fleet closed the distance to the hegemony formation. "First phase complete," Commander Torres reported. 4 enemy capital ships destroyed, 0 casualties on our side. Enemy formation is breaking apart, trying to establish maximum engagement range. Brennan nodded grimly. The quantum lance had exceeded even her most optimistic projections. Years of stolen hegemony research, combined with humanity's talent for weaponizing theoretical physics, had produced something truly terrifying. A weapon that didn't just destroy targets, but erased them from existence entirely. "Phase 2, she ordered. "All ships close to knife-fighting range. Don't let them coordinate their fire." The human fleet scattered into attack formations that would have been impossible with conventional technology. Each ship moved independently, guided by AI systems that could process tactical data and adjust strategies in microseconds. They flowed around the hegemony's desperate defensive fire like water around stones. "Ma'am," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the enemy flagship." "Put it through." Fleet Admiral Zexithok's image appeared on the main screen, his predatory features tight with controlled rage. Behind him, the bridge of his ship flickered with warning lights and damage reports. "Admiral Brennan." His voice carried a note of grudging respect. "You've hidden your strength well, but surely you realize this cannot end in anything but your species' extinction. Surrender now, and the hegemony might show mercy." Brennan studied her opposite number with interest. Zexithok was a career military officer, probably decent by his species standards. In another universe, they might have been allies. But this wasn't another universe. "Admiral Zexithok," she replied, her tone conversational. "I'm afraid you misunderstand the situation. This isn't a negotiation or a demonstration. This is an extermination." She gestured to her tactical officer. "Show him." The display behind Brennan shifted to show the current battle state. Of the 73 ships that had enforced humanity's quarantine, fewer than 40 remained combat effective. Human vessels swarmed around them like angry wasps, their superior speed and maneuverability negating every advantage the hegemony had thought they possessed. "Your fleet is dying, Admiral. Your communications are jammed. Your reinforcements are days away, and every minute you delay gives us more time to perfect our targeting solutions. The only question is whether you die fighting or die running." Zexathok's black eyes blazed with fury. "You think destroying one fleet will save you? The hegemony commands thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. We will turn your worlds to glass, your species to memory." "Maybe," Brennan acknowledged. "But first, you'll have to explain to your superiors how humanity developed weapons technology decades ahead of your own while you were busy congratulating yourselves on containing us. How an entire fleet operated in your backyard without detection. How 73 ships were destroyed by a species you considered primitive." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. "The hegemony's strength isn't in its ships or weapons, Admiral. It's in the belief that resistance is futile, that compliance is the only rational choice. Today we shatter that belief. Every species watching this battle will see that the mighty hegemony can bleed." The transmission cut off as another wave of quantum lances fired. The HSS Sovereign, a battle cruiser attempting to coordinate the hegemony's defensive fire, simply ceased to exist. Its destruction opened a gap in their formation that 3 human destroyers immediately exploited, their particle cannons raking the flanks of 2 more enemy ships. "Admiral," Torres reported, "Captain Vasquez reports successful penetration of their inner defense perimeter. The Nemesis and her escorts are in position to target their command ship." Brennan nodded. The battle was proceeding exactly as planned, but she felt no satisfaction in the slaughter. These hegemony crews were following orders, serving their species as she served hers. In another context, she might have respected their dedication. But context was everything, and the context was clear. The hegemony had declared war on humanity's future. Everything else was secondary. "Signal Captain Vasquez," Brennan ordered. "She is authorized to engage the enemy flagship." On the far side of the battle, the UHCS Nemesis emerged from the debris field of a destroyed hegemony cruiser, like a shark rising from the depths. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on her bridge, watching her primary target grow larger on the main screen. The HSS Dominion was a beautiful ship, she had to admit. Its flowing lines and organic curves spoke of a species that viewed warfare as an art form rather than mere violence. Under other circumstances, she might have admired its elegant design. Today, she was going to kill it. "Weapon status?" she asked her gunnery officer. "Quantum Lance charged and ready, Captain. We have a clear shot on their command section." Vasquez hesitated for a moment. Once she gave this order, there would be no going back. The hegemony admiral on that ship was probably a decent being, serving his species as she served hers. But he'd made the mistake of threatening humanity's children, and that was unforgivable. "Fire." The quantum lance reached out across space, reality bending around its passage. The HSS Dominion's shields flared and died, its hull armor proving as substantial as tissue paper against a weapon that existed partially outside normal space-time. Fleet Admiral Zexathok felt his ship dying around him, bulkheads collapsing as the quantum lance carved through his vessel's heart. Emergency lighting flickered and failed, replaced by the hellish glow of plasma fires and ruptured power conduits. In his final moments, as the bridge collapsed and the void rushed in to claim him, he found himself thinking not of defeat or revenge, but of a grudging respect for the species that had outmaneuvered him so completely. The humans had played a longer game than anyone imagined, and played it perfectly. The HSS Dominion broke apart in silence, its debris adding to the growing graveyard of hegemony ambitions. The cleanup took 6 hours. Admiral Brennan stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching her ships systematically hunt down the last few hegemony survivors. No quarter was given, no mercy shown. This wasn't cruelty, it was strategy. Every ship that escaped would carry word of humanity's capabilities back to the hegemony core worlds. The secret fleet couldn't remain secret much longer, but every day of uncertainty was a day for humanity to prepare for the next phase of the war. Final count, Commander Torres announced. 73 enemy ships destroyed, 0 survivors. Our losses: minimal damage to the cruiser Defiance, 17 crew members injured, none killed. Brennan nodded, though the victory felt hollow. They'd won this battle, but it was only the first of many. The hegemony wouldn't make the mistake of underestimating humanity again. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Return to Rally Point Omega for refit and resupply, and send a message to Earth Command. The quarantine has been lifted." As the human fleet began to disperse, disappearing once again into the void that had hidden them for so long, Brennan allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. They'd crossed a line today that could never be uncrossed. Humanity was no longer the galaxy's youngest species, struggling for acceptance and respect. They were players in the great game, with all the benefits and terrors that entailed. But as she watched Earth's blue marble slowly rotate in the distance, Brennan felt a fierce pride burn in her chest. Their children would grow up free, reaching for the stars with unshackled hands. Everything else was just details. The hegemony had quarantined Earth, believing they were caging a dangerous species. They'd been right about the danger. They'd just been wrong about who was in the cage. Epilogue. 6 months later. The Grand Council chamber of the galactic hegemony had never seen such chaos. Representatives from 7 major species and dozens of client races shouted over each other in a cacophony of languages, their universal translators struggling to keep pace with the overlapping arguments. At the center of it all, Grand Admiral Thexeran stood silent and still, his ancient features carved from stone as he weathered the storm of accusations and demands. Complete intelligence failure. 73 ships destroyed without warning. Humans have been building a secret fleet for decades. How did we not know? Silence. The voice that cut through the chaos belonged to Supreme Chancellor Vexithalan, oldest and most powerful member of the Hegemony Council. The chamber fell quiet as her 4 eyes fixed on each representative in turn. "Grand Admiral?" she said, her tone deceptively calm. "Explain to us how an entire human battle fleet operated within our sphere of influence without detection." Thexeran's weathered hands clasped behind his back as he faced the assembled representatives. His species, the Vorthaki, were known for their longevity and strategic patience, qualities that had made him the hegemony's supreme military commander for over 3 centuries. But even his legendary composure showed cracks under the weight of recent events. "The humans," he began, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent chamber, "have demonstrated a capacity for long-term strategic deception that our intelligence services failed to anticipate." Councillor Zekmoth of the Karate delegation slammed his scaled fist against his speaking podium. "Failed to anticipate? Grand Admiral, they built an entire shadow navy under our watch, ships with technology we didn't know existed." "Quantum lance weapons," added Representative Vexila from the crystalline Vextar, her form shimmering with agitation. "Matter displacement technology that our physicists claim should be impossible. How long have they possessed these capabilities?" Thexeran activated the chamber's holographic projector, displaying what remained of Fleet Admiral Zexathok's final tactical reports. The data was fragmentary. Most of it had been lost when the HSS Dominion was destroyed, but what survived painted a disturbing picture. Based on recovered battle data and subsequent intelligence gathering, we estimate the humans have been developing their shadow fleet for approximately 8 decades. While engaging in diplomatic relations with the hegemony, they were simultaneously reverse engineering our technology and developing countermeasures. The chamber erupted again, but Supreme Chancellor Vexithalan silenced it with a gesture. Her ancient eyes, older even than Thexeran, fixed on the Grand Admiral with uncomfortable intensity. Continue your assessment. The fleet that destroyed the quarantine force consisted of 147 vessels, ranging from destroyers to what can only be classified as super dreadnoughts. Their largest ship, designated by them as the UHCS Prometheus, masses approximately 40% more than our heaviest battlecruiser. Impossible, breathed Councillor Vexiturin of the bioengineering Sekli. Our intelligence showed no construction facilities capable of building vessels of that scale. Because they built them where we weren't looking. Thexeran's expression remained neutral, but his voice carried a note of grudging admiration. Asteroid mining operations that were actually shipyards. Research stations in the outer system that were weapons testing facilities. They turned their entire solar system into a military-industrial complex while we watched them squabble over trade agreements. Representative Mordain of the Hegemony's client races spoke up, his tentacles writhing with anxiety. Grand Admiral, what are the strategic implications? Can we contain this development? Thexeran was quiet for a long moment, his ancient mind processing scenarios and probabilities. Finally, he spoke. The tactical situation has changed fundamentally. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that match or exceed our own in several key areas. Their quantum lance technology represents a paradigm shift in naval warfare. Their stealth systems allowed them to deploy a fleet of that size without detection. Most concerning, their strategic patience and planning horizon appear to be longer than we credited them with. You're saying they're a threat to hegemony stability, Chancellor Vexithalan stated rather than asked. I'm saying they've already destabilized it. Thexeran gestured to the chaos that had preceded his report. 6 months ago, every species in this chamber believed that hegemony military supremacy was absolute. Today, we know that a species we considered primitive managed to build a navy that destroyed a full blockade fleet without losses. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. For millennia, the hegemony's authority had rested on the simple truth that resistance was futile. Now humanity had shattered that truth in a single devastating battle. What is the current disposition of the human fleet? Asked Councillor Zekmoth. Unknown. The admission clearly cost Thexeran something. After destroying the quarantine force, their ships dispersed back into deep space. Our attempts to locate their base of operations have been unsuccessful. They appear to be using the same stealth technology that hid them initially. And human diplomatic responses. They've withdrawn from all formal diplomatic contact. Their ambassador to the Hegemony Council departed 3 days after the battle with a simple message. Humanity respectfully declines further participation in hegemony governance structures. Since then, silence. Chancellor Vexithalan's expression was unreadable. Recommendations? Thexeran had been dreading this question. His military instinct screamed for massive retaliation, for the deployment of overwhelming force to crush this upstart species before they could inspire others. But his strategic mind recognized the trap that approach represented. We face a dilemma, he said carefully. A full military campaign against the human systems would require committing substantial fleet resources currently needed to maintain order in sectors where the news of our defeat is already spreading. The Thurian Commerce Guild has begun renegotiating tribute agreements. The Outer Rim territories are showing increased piracy activity. 3 client species have formally requested clarification of their defense obligations. You're saying we can't afford to fight them? Councillor Zekmoth snarled. I'm saying we can't afford to fight them and lose, and based on current intelligence assessments, victory is far from guaranteed. The chamber fell silent as the representatives absorbed this. The Grand Admiral of the Hegemony, Supreme Commander of the largest military force in galactic history, was admitting that humanity represented a genuine threat to their expansion. There is another consideration, Texeran continued. The humans have demonstrated technological capabilities we don't fully understand. If they're willing to share those technologies with other species... He didn't need to finish the thought. The hegemony's control relied on maintaining technological superiority over potential rivals. If humanity began sharing quantum lance technology or stealth systems with other species, the balance of power could shift dramatically. What do you recommend? Chancellor Vexathalan asked again. Containment rather than confrontation. Establish defensive perimeters around human space, but avoid direct engagement unless they begin expanding aggressively. Monitor their activities, attempt to understand their technology, and prepare for the possibility that the galactic order is about to change significantly. Representative Mordane's tentacles writhed more frantically. You're suggesting we allow them to exist as an independent power, a species that openly defied hegemony authority. I'm suggesting we avoid repeating Fleet Admiral Zexathok's mistake of underestimating them. Texeran's voice carried a note of steel. The humans spent 8 decades preparing for the battle they fought. They studied us, learned from us, and ultimately surpassed us in key areas. If we rush into another confrontation without understanding how they achieved this, we risk losing more than a single fleet. Chancellor Vexathalan was quiet for a long time, her 4 eyes studying the tactical displays that showed the growing unrest across hegemony space. Finally, she spoke. Grand Admiral, you are authorized to implement a containment strategy. Establish monitoring stations at the periphery of human space, but avoid direct confrontation. Focus our immediate efforts on maintaining stability in sectors where our authority is being questioned. She paused, her ancient gaze sweeping across the assembled representatives. This council is also authorized to begin discreet inquiries into how our intelligence services failed so completely. The humans may have achieved tactical surprise, but the strategic intelligence failure that allowed it represents a systemic problem that must be addressed. As the representatives began filing out of the chamber, arguing among themselves about implications and responses, Texeran remained behind. Chancellor Vexathalan approached him, her expression thoughtful. Your honest assessment, old friend. Are we looking at the beginning of the end? Texeran considered the question carefully. Perhaps. Or perhaps we're looking at evolution. The hegemony has maintained order through superior force for millennia, but force only works as long as it remains superior. The humans have demonstrated that technological advancement and strategic patience can overcome raw numerical superiority. And if other species learn that lesson, then we adapt, or we become irrelevant. He turned to face her fully. The humans didn't just defeat a fleet, Chancellor. They defeated the idea that the hegemony is invincible. Ideas are more dangerous than any weapon. They spread, they mutate, they inspire others to believe that change is possible. Chancellor Vexathalan nodded slowly. Then we'd better hope our containment strategy works. As she departed, leaving Texeran alone in the vast chamber, the Grand Admiral found himself thinking about Admiral Skylar Brennan, the human who had orchestrated humanity's liberation. He'd never met her, but he respected her tactical brilliance and strategic vision. In another universe, they might have been allies. In this one, they were simply players on opposite sides of a game that was about to become far more complicated. Outside the chamber's windows, the lights of the hegemony's capital world glittered like stars. But Texeran knew that somewhere in the darkness between those stars, human ships were moving with purpose unknown, carrying weapons that could erase matter from existence and crewed by beings who had proven that cages were only as strong as the will to break them. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity stopped asking for permission and started taking what they believed was rightfully theirs. The age of human ascendancy had begun, and the hegemony could only watch, wait, and hope they were ready for what came next.